tune you just listened to was the theme to the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That theme, to many, invokes visions of the American West. For many of us, this theme makes us think about deserts, horses, mean-looking cowboys, and countless other things that embody the culture of the American West. But what might be surprising is that this orchestral piece was composed not by an American, but by an Italian, Ennio Morricone. Ennio, along with directors like Tonino Valeri, Sergio Leone, and Sergio Corbucci, created hundreds of movies and what were called spaghetti westerns. These men not only shaped our perception of the American West, but used movies as a medium to communicate their own Italian history. In this video, we will look at how Italians connected to the American West used spaghetti westerns to create their own societal commentaries and have shaped our modern understandings of Western culture today. Forming only in 1861, Italy as a nation is relatively new. Most of Europe, and even the United States, were all well-established nations in 1861. Because of Italy's infancy, it struggled to find a national identity like other Western nations. This identity crisis was worsened by what is referred to as the Southern Question. The relatively rich, industrial north of Italy was discriminatory and domineering within the nation, making a singular national identity difficult to achieve. This, in large part, is where Italians became connected to the American West. In the United States, there was a similar question of the rich industrial north and a poor south. The American answer to this question was westward expansion, sending poor southerners west. Italy attempted to answer this question with the same methodology, except instead by colonizing Africa. In the 1880s, Italy began its colonial empire in Eritrea and Somalia, then colonizing Libya in the 1910s, and attempting to conquer Ethiopia multiple times. These areas were incentivized for Italians to move to and assisted in building an Italian identity, just as westward expansion became a part of the American identity. Thus, Italians felt akin to those of the American West, as culturally their colonization of Africa resembled that which occurred in America too. This initial connectedness between the two countries can be seen in early American Western movies, prior to the Italian-produced ones of the 1960s. These movies showed Americans in a heroic light, depicting their battles with indigenous Americans as positive feats. Italian movies existed in the same vein, showing colonial actions in Africa as courageous. The movie Lo Squadrone Bianco, or The White Squadron, was an Italian film from 1936 that tells the story of Italian soldiers based in Tripoli heroically fighting off rebellious natives. By defeating the natives and saving the colony, this Italian movie glorifies the Western identity that Italy had created for itself in the same manner that occurred in the United States. The spaghetti western was born out of this colonial connection which Italians found in their own identity and the American cowboy. However, the spaghetti western was not individually a connection between two cultures' similarities. Spaghetti westerns were further a commentary on the flaws, absurdity, and embellishments of the cowboy in the American West. This skepticism in the cowboy identity can be observed even before spaghetti westerns were being produced. When the Buffalo Bill roadshow depicting the American West came to Italy in the 1890s, Italian journalists found the show relatively boring and did not believe that the cowboys were even doing much of the work they claimed to be doing. This skepticism was only worsened when the American cowboys aligned themselves with Northern Italians, going directly against Southern Italians that would have been more likely to have related to the American cowboy. When Buffalo Bill himself said that poor Italians were, quote, not to be trusted, that was only an indication of the disillusionment that Italians would eventually feel with the American cowboy identity. Thus, it was no surprise that 60 years later, this sentiment largely resulted in the spaghetti western becoming a parody or even what could be considered a bastardization of the American Western identity. In place of the heroics that would often be found in westerns, the spaghetti western shifted its focus to anti-heroes. Where the hero might have previously embodied what at the time would be considered an ideal American, these movies had protagonists that were violent, disloyal, and often lived in morally gray areas. These alternate themes are rampant throughout spaghetti westerns. They depict the same sentiment which first arose in the Buffalo Bill reviews. The skepticism in the Western identity that Italians had initially connected with is present here too. However, spaghetti westerns escalated this skepticism into parody and resultantly rewrote how we see the West entirely. Instead of a frontier of heroes, the West became a place of crime, brutal violence, and vigilante justice. Italian directors, through the spaghetti western, were able to directly alter how we viewed the American West permanently. But not only did they alter our perception of the West today, they still affect modern filmmaking's perception of the West. One of the best exemplifications of this is Quentin Tarantino, an Italian-American filmmaker who makes westerns today. Films such as Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are both directly inspired and/or adaptations of famous spaghetti western movies. Tarantino's movie The Hateful Eight even had its musical score written by Ennio Morricone, who we discussed earlier. These movies could furthermore be seen as the culmination of the parody that was seen in the original spaghetti westerns. Tarantino's westerns are filled to the brim with over-the-top gore, violence, betrayal, and other tropes. Thus, through film and the spaghetti western, Tarantino is emulating the connection that Italian Americans initially had with this identity, and parodying it due to the lifestyle it illustrated. Ultimately, Italians who created spaghetti westerns, and their attempts to create a commentary on the American West, painted a picture that has become representative of an entire genre and a culture.